Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm György Schöpflin, member of the European Parliament from Hungary, and I'm delighted to be able to welcome you to this showing of the film 5 Days of War, which is, as I think you all know, about the Russian-Georgian War of 2008. Now, the war itself may only have lasted for a few days, but it does have far-reaching implications. It showed, for one, that Russia will use hard power, military intervention against a neighbor, when it feels like it. This readiness to use force evidently places Russia outside Europe. In Europe, we don't do this kind of thing anymore. Russians may think otherwise, but I think that is the way in which most Europeans will see it. Then it seems to me that by this action, and we after all have had some time to see the consequences, Russia has generated a good deal of insecurity among its neighbors, something which is exacerbated by the recognition of Abkhazia and South Ossetia as having seceded from Georgia, contrary obviously to international law. Is this a precedent? Well, we don't know, but it could be. Then Russia's move points up the dilemma of what happens when soft power meets hard power. We in the European Union believe that disputes can be resolved without violence. Clearly, if you use hard power, that means you don't. Now, there are certain situations, obviously, when you can't avoid the use of hard power. And in fact, I think what we've also seen is that Europe itself has recognized that in certain circumstances it has no alternative but to use hard power. I think this is what we've seen in Libya this year. Hard power, in that sense, has returned to the European agenda. The film depicts the actual events, and as such is not about the future. All the same, an assessment of the war does offer pointers about how Russia sees itself, sees the world, and I suppose how it will go on seeing it under Putin's coming presidency. At least we can reasonably assume that Putin will again be president of Russia. What we can see from all this is that the Caucasus represents a very serious problem for Russia. It doesn't like the fact that the three southern Caucasian states are autonomous, independent. It has its own North Caucasian problem, a major Islamic upheaval, upsurge. I don't think we can call it a revolt or a revolution, but people are being killed pretty much every day. It's, let's say, an extraordinary situation. There are other sources of insecurity in the region, and Russia has to cope with this. Now, what we've seen is that the Russian method is not to use kid gloves, but as I say, to use hard power, even if, and it seems to me that this is increasingly clear, this is counterproductive. Russia basically doesn't seem to like political actors independent of it, autonomous of it, nearby. It can't do very much, I suppose, about autonomous actors a long way from Russia. It sees autonomous action on its border as inherently threatening. It tries to subjugate these independent actors, and clearly this is something that independent actors don't like. Georgia self-evidently. Georgia, some of you will know this, has actually been twice attacked by Russia in its history, once immediately after the revolution in the early period of Georgian independence. People tend to forget these historical precedents, but as it happens, I think this is worth reinterring. So, what does this film tell us? Well, it tells us that the use of force can bring about short-term stability, but in the medium term and longer term, it is counterproductive precisely because the relationship between Russia and Georgia cannot be neutralized, it cannot be stabilized, it cannot be brought into some kind of normality, of a kind of normal relationship that does on the whole exist between neighbors within Europe. And I think in the longer term, Russia will also pay a price for its war in 2008. And I hope you enjoy the film, and I'm very sorry that I can't be here with you to see it with you. Thank you.